A while back, I did a video on the plan for an international station at Surrey Docks. Then I did a video on the other potential sites considered for an international station. And now I'm going to complete the trilogy with a video about the proposal that got further than any of the others, a station at White City. In the early 1970s, it was looking certain that there would be a Channel Tunnel. The government had published a white paper in 1963 giving the project tentative support. Studies were carried out of potential sites for a London terminus, and the results were published in 1972. In 1973, Britain joined the European Economic Community, which gave the whole thing more impetus, and led to Britain and France reaching an agreement. Everything was go, and plans were made to build the new terminus. The international terminus would have been about here, where there's some rather expensive housing being built now. Hope my presence doesn't lower the property values. It would cross the Metropolitan line and overlap with the site of the dystopian shopping centre that is Westfield London. Several sites were considered, including Clapham Junction, Bricklayers Arms, Battersea, the Isle of Dogs, New Cross, Bishopsgate, the London Docks, West Brompton and Kensington Olympia. But the three that made the shortlist were the disused Surrey Docks, which would hopefully provide jobs to a now economically deprived area, Victoria Station, which was due a rebuild and had good access to the south coast, and White City. White City emerged as the favourite. There were several reasons for this. The area was largely industrial and much of the land was already owned by British Rail, so it seemed like objections to such a development would be fairly minimal. It would require the demolition of the remains of the original White City, the exhibition halls from the 1908 Franco-British exhibition. There was enough space for a major through station and carriage sidings. There were two tube lines, the Central Line and the Hammersmith and City Line, which back then was considered to be part of the Metropolitan Line. I'm probably going to keep calling it the Hammersmith and City Line for the purposes of this video. The Westway was next to the site, providing road access, and the underused West London Line ran through the site. Geographically, White City is located in Zone 2, or for non-Londoners, outside the city centre, but not too far from the city centre. The route would have gone thus. Originally, the idea was that it would use the existing commuter lines to the south coast, but the planners soon realised that that was a crazy idea, and there would need to be a dedicated rail line for Channel Tunnel traffic. It's a shame the planners didn't remember that in the 1990s when the tunnel was actually being built, but that's a whole other story. The route would have largely paralleled existing railways, with a few diversions and a couple of tunnels along the way. It would have ducked into a tunnel under Croydon, emerging at Balham, and running alongside the main line to Clapham Junction. There it would run along a newly widened West London line to White City. There was potential to extend it further to connect with the West Coast Main Line at Willesden and the Great Western Main Line at Old Oak Common. It would have been an enormous station, and here's an approximate diagram. There would have been 8 covered platforms and a 2-level arrival and departure centre. That's probably where all the check-ins and shops that sell giant Toblerones would be. There would have been a walkway connecting Wood Lane and the Westway. The thinking was that the Westway would be the road connection. To that end, there would be a 2-level underground car park and a taxi rank coming off that road. There would be a bus station, which would come off Wood Lane. There would be travellators connecting the main station building with the underground. What's interesting, particularly when one considers what came later, is the plans for the underground itself. Initially it was assumed that White City Tube Station would have to be re-sited, but the 1974 plan seems to suggest that the terminus would be built around the tube station. Which is good. That's an award-winning station, don't you know? It would, however, undoubtedly have resulted in the resiting of the White City Underground depot and the demolition of the old Central London Railway power station. There would also be a new Hammersmith and City Line station fronting onto Wood Lane. In fact, basically where the Hammersmith and City Line station called Wood Lane is now. I reckon that if this had been built, though, they probably would have called it White City, since it would be basically a direct interchange with the Central Line. There were doubts about the project. For one thing, the roads of Shepherd's Bush were already crowded, and Westway or no, this big new station would not help matters. There was also a feeling from a local authority standpoint that this site offered few social benefits as compared to, say, Surrey Docks, because the area was already undergoing a lot of urban renewal. Costs swiftly began to rise as the plans were examined in more detail. Ironically, British Rail themselves would complain about the project. Their southern region carried a lot of commuter traffic, and it was felt that this new line would be taking their investment. British Rail also owned the Sea Link ferry service, who complained of unfair competition. The government, meanwhile, were somewhat hard up, looking to make savings in the wake of the oil crisis. And so in 1975, everything from tunnel to terminus was, well, terminated. Over time, the area would be redeveloped, but not for travel, but for commerce. In 2008, Westfield Shopping Centre opened. This actually resulted in a lot of things happening that the 1974 plan had called for. That same year, the new Wood Lane station opened. So too did a bus station on Wood Lane. White City Tube Depot was rebuilt underground, although happily the old power station buildings have been kept. The remains of White City were bulldozed. And I'm sure you can still buy giant Toblerones here. The other part of the site, west of the Hammersmith and City line, is getting housing built on it. The developers reckon it's iconic, just like every single other housing development. The area actually did get a new railway station, also in 2008, but it was the rather smaller Shepherd's Bush Overground station. The Overground has made the West London line a lot busier than it was in 1974. The whole site lies within the White City regeneration area. It's curious to reflect that had the plans of 1974 gone ahead, there might have been no need for such an area. But, well, politics, money, these are the demons you must slay if you want to get a railway built. What really interests me is how quickly the whole thing came and went. In just a couple of years it went from a theoretical concept to a concrete plan to an abandoned dream. From White City to White Elephant, in record time. Well, I do hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. Maybe I should complete the story by going into the histories of Waterloo and St Pancras. That would be the very devil of a project. Still, let me know if that would be the kind of thing that would be of interest. I would like as ever to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon and here on YouTube for your generous support. You are the duty-free to my departure lounge. And I'll see you all again very soon. Cheerio.